Hi, good day everyone. You're welcome to my channel. My name is Michael and you're welcome to Mike Mood Fashion Tutorial. Please, if you're just joining this channel, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this channel. Okay, in our last video, we talked about the tools needed for pattern drafting. But today on this video, we're going to be learning how to use a measuring tape. How to use a measuring tape. Now, in our last video, I talked just a little bit about the measuring tape, how that we have different systems of measuring or measurements all over the world. We have the imperial measurements and we have the metric system of measurements. Now, when we talk about the metric system of measurements, we are talking about the measurements using centimeters, using meters and grams, etc. We're talking about the imperial system of measurements. We are talking about measurements using inch, feet, pound, and so on and so forth. So in this part of the world, because where I am based in, the imperial system of measurements is more acceptable, is more useful in this place. So today we are going to be learning how to read the tape measurements. Now, looking at the tape measurement very well, because I have two types here. There are several varieties of measuring tape we have in the market. Now, I am talking about the part of the world where I live. We are more used to the imperial measurements than the metric system of measurements. Okay, for this tape right now, if you look at the front of this tape, we have the imperial system of measurements, which has about 1 to 60, about 60 inches. Then just behind the tape also, we have the metric system of measurement, which has about 1 centimeter to about 150 centimeters at this point. And I would love to expatiate on both, although they are the same, but they are slightly different. Okay, I'm going to talk about the difference as we continue with this video. Okay, looking at the tape measurement very well. Okay, this my tape measurement has about 60 inches. It has about 60 inches on an average, which is okay for an average human being or an average person. This is also about 60 inches also. So, however, some of us might be wondering, how do we come about an inch? How do we come about an inch? What is an inch actually? Okay, now looking at this chart I have here, for the purpose of illustration, I've been able to make this chart, to draw this chart out. Okay, so we are going to have an assumption. It's just like the way we have, okay, I'm going to come back to the ruler. But before then, I just want us to make use of this illustration we have right here. Now, let's just assume this is actually our tape, our measuring tape, okay? You know, the measuring tape I showed us right now, just it has about 60 inches, okay, for measuring tape. So we just, for the sake of explanation and illustration, we are just having about 1 to 4 inches. And when we're talking about an inch, okay, in an inch contains 8 bars. When we are talking about bars here, we are talking about this, okay? So let's say between 1 and 2, let's count the bars we have there. We have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So between 1 and 2, we have about 8 bars. So 8 bars makes an inch for the imperial measurement. 8 bars make an inch. Okay, so the same thing applies to, okay, so from this 2 now to 3, let's see the same thing again. How many bars make an inch? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the same applies to this 4, okay? So 8 bars make an inch, okay? Now, how do we measure the small bits, these bars we have here, okay? So in fractions now, for example, if our measurement falls to this 1 bar here, that is going to be like 1 over 8. That is 1/8 of an inch. This alone, this bar alone, represents 1/8 of an inch in fraction. And when we change it to decimal, okay, in decimal is going to be 0.125. So by the time we start calculating measurement using our calculator, we'll get decimals like this instead of fractions. Okay, we'll get decimals like this. So by the time we see things like this in our calculator giving us 0.125, that what that means is that that's actually 1/8 of an inch. Now the second bar here, okay, represents, okay, 2/8 of an inch. 2/8 of an inch, that is 2/8 in fractions. Then in decimal, it is 0.025. In your calculator, this is how you see it. Most times your calculator don't bring it out in fractions like this. It rather brings it out in decimal places. So when you have the second bar here, what you have is 2/8 of an inch. That is, you are having 2 bars away from 8 bars, okay, to 8 of an inch, which is 0.025. This could also be quarter of an inch, okay. So if you actually divide 8 bars, okay, into 4, what you're going to have here is you have 1, you have 2, you have 3, okay, which gives you 4, okay. So just this 2 bars here is actually quarter of an inch. So if you don't want to either write this in fraction, which is 2/8 of an inch, or 0.25 in decimals is written in calculator, you can also say it is 1/4 inch or quarter inch. It is 1/4 inch or quarter inch. Now the third one is 3/8 of an inch. The third bar is 3/8 of an inch. Now in fraction, it comes out as 3/8 of an inch, but in decimal places in calculator, you see that's 0.375. Okay, this block is going to help you a lot when you start doing measurements for your drafting your patterns. Okay, so it's very necessary you know this. Okay, so maths is actually very important. I told you this fashion designing is both science and art, so we are going to be exploring all around. Now talking about the fourth bar, for example, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that will be 4/8. Okay, 4/8 in fractions. Then in decimal place, it's going to be 0.5. So when you see 0.5, it means half. Okay, it means half of an inch. So half of an inch, it can be 1/2. Okay, can be 1/2 in fractions of an inch, or 4/8 of an inch, or 0.5, giving you half of an inch. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the fifth place, we have 5/8 of an inch. The fifth bar, we have 5/8 in fractions. Then in decimal places, when you see it in the calculator, it comes out at 0.625. So when you see number 0.625, it means that that number plus 5/8 of an inch. Okay, that number plus 5/8 of an inch, which is 5/8 of an inch. Okay, now the next is 6/8 of an inch. That's it, 6 bars. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this is 6/8 of an inch. Okay, so either you make it, okay, 6/8 of an inch, and in calculator in decimal places, this is in fraction. In decimal place in the calculator, it will be 0.750. Okay, sometimes you can see it as 0.75, and sometimes, okay, now if you want to put that in fraction also, it could be 3/4. Okay, that means 3/4 inch. That is 1, 2, 3. So dividing this inch into 4 places, you'll be having 2, 4, 6, 8. So for 3/4 of an inch, that is, you're having 1, 2, 3/4, which is 3/4 of an inch. Now for this, the seventh one in fraction is going to be 7/8. That is 7 bars over 8 bars. Okay, and in decimal place in the calculator, it will be 0.875. 0.875. That is for this particular one. So there are only 8 bars that make up an inch. So when you have 8 bars, it makes up an inch. For the sake of demonstration purpose and illustration purpose, I have two tape measures here with me, having the same length and having the same measurements, but however they vary in different ways. Now looking at this first tape I have here, just like what I explained earlier on, we have about 8 bars for each inch. Okay, so from moving from one inch to the other, you have to Okay, you have to count about 8 bars moving from 1 inch to the other. Now looking at this other one, you can see that it is quite different from this other one because this is more detailed. That's to tell you that just after every bar there are mini measurements, or there are minor measurements also that goes after or before another bar. Okay, so having this bar, there are tiny measurements also in between. Okay, now going back to my chart, this is what I'm trying to explain. Now looking at this, when you compare this to this, you can see that they are the same, having 8 bars. Okay, however, there are other tapes that gives you, you know, the measurements even to the tiniest. Okay, what I mean by that is that even in between this and this, there's a measurement in between, there are measurements in between, there are measurements in between, there are measurements in between. Okay, now if you get to count from here to here, you should be having about 16 bars. If you get to count from here to here, you should be having about 16 bars. Okay, so there are some other measurements that come in that way also. Okay, which you can have one you can have 1/16 of an inch. Okay, you have 1/16 of an inch. Now 1/16 of an inch is this in fraction, and in decimal place is 0.63. Now for the purpose of learning in this my video, you could actually, pause for a while and do a screenshot of this block, because this is going to be very useful to you. Practice makes perfect. Okay, so as you get to know this gradually, it's not an automatic process, but as you get to study this, you become an outlier in it. You should be able to read this measurement and use it up, apply it in your project, in your pattern work. So this is about 1/16 of an inch. So if you want to get 3/16 of an inch in in decimal place, it becomes 0.188. 5/16 of an inch is 0.313. 7/16 of an inch is 0.438. 9/16 of an inch is about 0.563. So this is actually the inch in its bits, in its minimum, how you can calculate an inch. A normal inch tape, like what I explained to us, just has about 8 bars. Okay, now there are some other tapes too, which gives you this measurement in bits. So what that tells you is that, so if you have 1/16, for example, of an inch, and you have another 1/16 of an inch, what you get is you automatically get 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so it goes on and on like that. But these decimal places you are seeing here, this is how it's going to appear on your calculator as you're going to be calculating, dividing, multiplying your measurements to apply to your pattern. So this is how you get to see them in the calculator. So when it appears this way, you actually take it to fraction to know what measurement, what you're supposed to apply in a particular measurement. All right, guys. At this moment, I hope I've been able to explain to us how to use the measuring tape, how to interpret the measurements on the measuring tape. As in this part of the world, we are more used to the imperial measurements. So in the next video, guys, we are going to be learning how to take body measurements, and from there we should be able to interpret these also and to impute them in our pattern as we start our pattern drafting. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can send you notifications as we post new videos, and looking forward to see you in the next video. Bye.